Hi, I'm Matt Young, and I'm here with my law partner, Sarah Costanzo, and we're talking today about policies and procedures that implicate the current coronavirus pandemic. Sarah, we're going into the spring here, and there's a lot of talk about moving people back into the workplace, into offices, and then, of course, we're seeing some pushback. What are your thoughts about requiring employees to come back to the workplace?
Well, there's a lot of talk about it in social media and in the papers. And I think some of the things that people don't understand is Ohio is an at-will employment state. So if employers decide they want to require employees to be on site, they can do that. If they want to require vaccinations in order to be on site, under many circumstances, they can do that too. And those are some tough discussions, but there's a lot of special parameters around that.
So you talked about Ohio law, you mentioned that, but of course we're also subject to federal law when it comes to employment matters, including the ADA and the EEOC. So how do you reconcile some of your comments with being mindful of those acts as well, those federal acts?
Right. Well, because the federal government has recognized in this situation the COVID as a pandemic, and they've set some certain parameters up to allow the requirements for vaccines and things like that, one of the things that employers have to be cautious of are making reasonable accommodations. So when you have employees that may have disabilities or may have other circumstances, whether it's religious preferences, different beliefs, you have to make accommodations for those protected classes when you are looking at your policies and procedures, so that if somebody, if the rest of your workforce is required to do X, you have to be able to address accommodations in your policies for other categories that are identified in the ADA and the EEOC. So it's a little technical.
Sure. In terms of getting people back and having them be agreeable to come back, obviously we're going on a year now with this, and many people are very comfortable at home and are probably less than excited to come back into the office. What would you say about providing incentives to those employees, or would you recommend more of a mandate that your continued employment is conditioned on your willingness and your cooperation to come back into the office?
Sure. I think one of the things that employers have to look at is they may have some cookie cutter policies that address their right as an at-will employer to mandate people to come back or to mandate vaccines or not. But what they need to look at as far as employee retention is making sure your employees are also happy and want to be there. So ways that you can revise those policies are to build in incentives, again, making sure that you're being equal across the board so you're not violating the EEOC, but offering, for example, certain incentive packages for employees that maybe if you've been with the company for 5 years, you've earned the right to work remotely on 3 days a week. Creating flexible work schedules. Again, when someone works from home, they're avoiding the cost of travel, transportation, and other factors, and maybe even their auto insurance for their personal vehicles is reduced because the miles that they're driving is less per year. So look at ways that you can change those cookie cutter policies to adapt to your workforce. What do you have? Who are the people that work for you? And what are they interested in? Not everybody wants to be remote. I personally love coming in because I separate my work life from my home life, but other people like to be home because maybe they have a different environment at home and they're not isolated or sitting alone all day, so maybe they prefer that, or some type of a blend. So I really think that altering or adjusting those policies to reflect what your employee base is super huge in keeping your employees happy and employed.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like there's really a lot to think about. And really, they probably should be reaching out to council to hone those policies to make sure that they're legally compliant and they align with the credit union's objectives as well.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest point here today. Don't just rely on what your boilerplate provisions are. Reach out to people that may have some additional insight like our firm, and let us help you through these. Let us help navigate some of these differences so that, again, it's going to reflect what your workforce is versus everybody else's workforce and make sure that those people stay in your organization. We're here to help.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah.